Hello, everybody. We are just about to start. I'm just letting people into the lobby and then we will begin. It's quite a few of you join. We have a few more who are registered, so hopefully they will join shortly. But we will just get started for now. So welcome and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. I am Madeline Jeunesse and I am Head of Business for the Association of Cost Lawyers Training, and I'm really pleased to welcome you all to this session on careers in cost law and how you can become a cost lawyer. The aim of today's discussion is to provide you with a clear understanding of what it means to become a cost lawyer and how the step can benefit you in your career. So we'll be covering the personal experiences of our panelists. One is a qualified cost lawyer and one is currently studying to become a cost lawyer. And we'll talk sort of more generally about the skills and opportunities the role offers and practical advice on how you can apply for the course and what the qualification looks like. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. So cameras and mics are disabled because this session is being recorded and will be circulated afterwards. But the chat should be enabled for Q&A. So if you've got any questions, hopefully we'll have some time at the end to cover those and you can post those in the chat. So just a little bit about cost lawyering. Cost lawyers are the area of the legal profession who are the experts in the law and practice of legal costs. To qualify as a cost lawyer, you have to do a 2-year course, which is currently run by ACL Training. We are the training arm of the Association of Cost Lawyers, who are the representative body for the cost law profession. And currently there is only one qualifying course, which is the one that we offer. We are regulated by the Cost Lawyer Standards Board, who are the regulator for the costs law profession. Currently, to come on to the ACL course, you do a 2-year course, need to complete 2 years of qualifying experience, which I'll talk a little bit about later, and the kind of the exemptions that you can get for the course for prior legal study that you might have done, for example, if you've done a law degree or the LPC. Right, so joining us today, without further ado on the panel, I've got Amy Dunkley from Bolt Burton Kemp, who's a senior cost lawyer, Matt Walwyn from Clayton Legal, who is a legal recruiter, and Amna Aziz, who is a current student on the CLPQ course and is also working in a costs role currently. So they'll be sharing their insights and talking about, their career journeys to date and why this is an exciting time to join the profession. So thank you to you all for being here, and let's get started. So let's start by exploring the journey into becoming a cost lawyer. So this question is for Amy and Amna. So what made you decide to qualify as a cost lawyer, and how has your role changed since qualifying? Amy, why don't you start us off?
Thanks, Madeline. So hello, everyone. It's a bit weird speaking to blank screens. I'm a bit apprehensive about doing Teams meetings, but hello, I'm Amy. As Madeline has said, I qualified as a cost lawyer in January 2022. I actually started out in a small firm doing civil litigation in a number of different areas. So the firm at the time did corporate and commercial cases, and I ended up in the litigation department of that firm, and I really enjoyed it. Then a cost lawyer actually joined that firm, and I started to work with her on some of her matters that she was taking on. And she really encouraged me to choose a career in legal costs. Like most people, I hadn't even heard of legal costs before actually meeting a cost lawyer. And then when that firm sadly then ceased to exist, that was the career path that I then chose with her encouragement. So I spoke to Matt, who is actually here today, and asked, are there any cost lawyer jobs going? Is that something I can go for? Because I had a law degree and I'd got just under a year experience in that firm, mainly kind of doing litigation. And I knew litigation was something that I really enjoyed. As my family would say, I'm a bit of an arguer. So I think everyone who knows me would agree that's where my strengths would lie. And then I did an interview at Bolt Bird and Kemp for their junior cost drafts person role. So I got that job in May 2019. I then worked at BBK for a while doing cost drafts person work. So I received some training on bill drafting and other cost documents under the supervision of my manager. And then after I'd been there for a while, BBK decided to put me forward for the cost lawyer qualification. It was slightly different at the time I did it. It was slightly longer. So I did 2 years and I did that alongside working at BBK and then qualified on 11th of January 2022. In terms of how my role has changed since qualifying, I think that's quite difficult because one of the good things about the cost lawyer course is the fact that it allows you to work alongside doing your training and taking the qualification course. So I think working has helped me with the cost lawyer course, but I also think the cost lawyer course really helped me improve in terms of the standard of my work. And that was actually picked up on by my work colleagues. And my boss said, I've noticed you've made a massive improvement in your legal cost knowledge since taking the cost lawyer course. And after I qualified, I took on more responsibility. So, for example, I did more advocacy. I did CCMCs. I did more complicated. I was trusted with doing more complicated applications and dealing with more complicated cost issues. And I now manage 2 people. And I think that's in a nutshell. Do you think that answers your question, Madeline?
I hope so. There's a very thorough answer, Amy. Thank you very much. Amna, how about you?
Can I just double check you can hear me first?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, so I'm Amna. I started my career in costs last year. Can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear now.
Yeah, so as I said, I just started my career in cost last April and I joined DWF as a cost paralegal. So I actually assisted other fee earners with their work. So I wasn't doing anything fee earning myself. So I was preparing bundles and things like that. And that was a graduate role after I completed my law degree the year before that. I just kind of took some time out to decide what I wanted to do. And it was I wanted to stay into law. And I think most people either start out in law as paralegal or with a training contract. And yeah, after that, I spent about 10 months in that role. And I was given the opportunity to move into a fee earner role at DWF. My role was quite different to others in the sense that I actually was doing Scottish cost work, which isn't the norm, but it's quite similar to England and Wales, pick up the same type of skills, and thankfully that does count towards my qualifying experience. I've double checked that with ACLT. Yeah, I stayed in that role for well, up until this week. And as of Monday, I started at Partners and Costs as a cost negotiator, working in claimant costs, and hope to develop my skills here. Yeah, I decided to transition into becoming a training software just because I think I'm so sorry for the mic issue.
That's
Yeah,
okay, it's absolutely fine, no problem.
yeah, as I say, as like many other people, we only know of one other way to qualifying as becoming a legal professional, and that's becoming a solicitor. And that's what I originally planned out to do. And when I joined COS, I found out there was actually other ways of qualifying, basically, and it's a lot easier. Well, I wouldn't, it still requires the same amount of effort, but breaking into a career as a cost lawyer is a lot easier than as a solicitor, as it should be. It's become way too difficult to qualify with the changes with the SQE. I thought I'd make my life a lot easier. I'm gaining the same benefits that a legal regulated professional is going to gain, and the same status. And yeah, I'm happy I did make the move. In terms of what changes I've seen from my work, it's definitely made me a lot confident in my work. I've only been on the course for a couple of months because I was exempt from the first year of year one just because of my law degree. So it's quite soon to say because obviously I was doing Scottish course before, but going into my role now, I definitely feel a lot more confident as opposed to if I wasn't on the course. Yeah, I'm happy I did make the move.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So this is quite timely actually, because you just had a question in the chat about how manageable it is to manage the course with full-time work. So the CLPQ, which is the Cost Lawyer Professional Qualification, which is the qualifying course, it's delivered over 2 years. If you've done any higher level legal studies such as an LLB or GDL, maybe you've done Silex level 6 or the LPC or one of the bar courses, you can be exempt from up to a year of the course, which reduces the study time down to a year. The course is delivered part-time and it's delivered entirely online. There's one in-person point, which is in year 2, but otherwise it's delivered by webinars and tutorials, all delivered online. You work through the course material online, and then you have a weekly tutorial, which is about an hour a week. Which is usually delivered, because most people that do the course are working full time. It's usually delivered over a lunchtime or sometimes an early evening, depending on the module and the tutor. But it's designed to be very, very flexible. It's designed to fit around your working life. So for Amy and Amna, what were your biggest challenges in balancing work and studying for the cost lawyer qualification?
Amna, would you like to go first on this one?
Yeah, that's fine. So I think it's because obviously the course has been designed to work around full-time work. I wouldn't say it's that difficult, but as long as you can make the time for it. So I personally, I know what everyone's got their own ways of like going about it, because what works for one person isn't always going to work for the other. So I've personally dedicated one full day on my weekend to studying, and I found that that one full day
Should we move over to Amy? Amy, can you tell us about your experiences when you were studying? I know it was a slightly longer course then, but the course is, delivered very similarly.
Yeah, so I think I would have still had to have done the 2 years if I started the course now, because I don't have an LPC or a BPTC. I just have a law degree. So I think the structuring in terms of the assessment is different though. So when I did the course, it was a 3-hour exam at the end of every year, and then also a coursework module. And the coursework and the exam made up your final grade. So on each topic, we had a coursework assessment, and then we had a 3-hour final exam at the end of each year on the same topics, but not the aspects of those topics that had already been covered in the coursework. So I was quite fortunate because my firm was quite supportive of the training aspect. When I knew I had a coursework deadline, I booked out in my diary a Friday. So I think that was like every few months we had a coursework deadline. So, and then I found those 3 days. So I would do my coursework that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday and submit it. I think the deadline was a Sunday evening. So obviously I was fortunate to get study leave, but I think you still would have been able to do it in those 2 days as long as you block that time out. And of course you get the deadlines at the start of each academic year, so you can plan around that. And then of course I had some study leave for the final exam each year, because that required a bit more planning because of the locations we were doing it. We were doing it in, and where I live. And I can't remember the study leave I took for the exam. I don't think I took very much study leave for the exam, as it was just revision. But I think the strategy that Amna has said of doing it, each weekend is probably the most sensible. And I think the fact that so many people have qualified through this course while working full-time shows that it is feasible and it does work, but it will be based upon each student and their individual circumstances and how they want to plan around that. Because of course, a lot of the time that you dedicate to it will reflect on the grades you get at the end. But at the same time, I haven't ever had anyone ask me, oh, what grade did you get in your cost lawyer course? Like, no, you're a cost lawyer. No one's going to be comparing you against other cost lawyers that might have got, I don't know, 80 instead of 60. You're still competent and you're now a regulated individual. So I wouldn't worry too much. It's just about managing time, I think.
Yes, I mean, the course changed last year to reflect the CLSB's publication of its competency statement, which mandates the kind of skills, knowledge and behaviours cost lawyers should embody. And with that, there was a change in the training rules as to how cost lawyers qualify. So currently across the 9 modules of the course, we adopt a different assessment strategy to previous iterations. So the course is now assessed by a single summative assessment. So on year 1, you have 1 exam and everything else is coursework. And on year 2, there are 2 exams and the remaining modules are coursework. Advocacy is taught as a separate in-person assessment, but not everybody needs to do advocacy depending on if they've done the bar course. You're exempt from that element. We publish the dates of the assessments at the beginning of each year, and the assessment is now concentrated in certain windows within the year. So assessments either take place in January or in June. So you're able to plan ahead, the work that you'll need to do to meet those assessment requirements. So it's designed to be a bit more flexible in that respect. The other thing that we do now, which is a feature of the course, is that all of the exams are delivered through online proctoring. So you can sit your exam from home, or you can sit the exam in the office if you book out a meeting room, but you don't have to travel anywhere now to do an exam. So thank you both for those answers. So we'll move on to the next question. Matt, what advice would you give to people that might be considering qualifying as a cost lawyer? Obviously, in the role that you've got, you'll see people from a range of professional backgrounds coming to you.
I think the main thing what would stand out for me is that, especially within law firms, if you've done the qualification, it enables you to kind of go into a variety of things as well as your day-to-day role. I think if you're just kind of a cost draftsman, your role's quite niche in terms of where it can take you. So I think a lot of law firms will look at kind of long-term career development plans for you. Like if you take Amy, for example, there's so much to her role, and the knowledge behind the AC that you gain from the ACL enables you to go do different things on top of maybe your daily drafting or your daily negotiations. So I think it just enables you to have kind of a longer career in cost if you want to progress, and that's your mentality. Where some people just want to be a cost draftsman and just draft bills day in, day out, and that's all solely what they do. So I think it just gives you more opportunity kind of further down the line for your self-development.
Thank you. Okay. So, I mean, kind of picking up that question, what opportunities do you think are available to cost lawyers that aren't accessible to paralegals or cost draftsmen? Amy, what do you think?
In terms of the opportunities, as I've kind of touched on, doing the course gives you that kudos that you have passed a professional qualification and you're now a regulated individual by the CLSB. So it means you're individually regulated as opposed to just being regulated if you work in an SRA regulated firm. Now there is a tide that is turning at the moment, generally in terms of society and the judiciary against unregulated professionals and also towards consumer protection. We've seen that in a lot of recent cases such as Oakwood and Menzies. And actually, a cost judge, Jennifer James, criticised the fact that a cost draftsman had prepared a bill of costs recently that was, she said she actually, if that person was a cost lawyer, he would have been reported, but he was a cost drafts person, so wasn't regulated. So I think that reflects a growing call for highly specialized legal cost work to be done only by regulated professionals. Technically, cost draftspeople and paralegals can do this work under supervision of a regulated person as per the Legal Services Act. But of course, the way things are going, I personally, obviously this is only my personal opinion, don't anticipate it to stay that way for much longer. And also in terms of the wider legal sphere, similar, I guess, towards solicitors, once paralegals qualify as solicitors, you have that kudos that you have passed the course and you've reached a certain standard. As I said, I was trusted with more responsibility after doing the course because I was told that there was a noticeable improvement in my legal knowledge. And of course, with that comes an opening of the door to more opportunities because, of course, you're more competent to do those things. I don't think we actually, in terms of advocacy, most advocacy is done by cost lawyers or barristers. As I've said before, cost drafts people can do this under supervision, but I don't think I've actually been opposite a cost drafts person doing advocacy very recently. Most of the time I will be opposite another cost lawyer or another barrister. So I think that just shows the fact that if you want to be doing these more highly specialized activities such as advocacy, it does seem to me, definitely in my own firm, but also elsewhere, that is an activity that is mostly undertaken by cost lawyers or barristers, as I've said.
Thank you. Matt, let's hear from you. How does the recruitment market look in this context, in the sort of the roles that you recruit for?
I think, as Amy said there about the advocacy side, there's not many cost draftsmen or draft people that would do the advocacy side. I think for firms, it don't make sense to have a cost draft person there being supervised when you could just have a cost lawyer there in terms of cost savings. I think a lot of private practice firms, law firms will kind of usually recruit at that kind of mid-level upwards. And then that mid-level upwards usually is that cost lawyer standard. I think a lot of trainees that go into a lot of law firms do the ACL anyway. So when they come to recruit, they do look at more cost lawyers rather than cost trust people, really. Just because a lot of law firms, again, will see it as a long-term development. So they want people to be able to do X, Y, and Z rather than just X. So there's still opportunities there for draft people and draftsmen, but I think the majority are kind of that cost lawyer, 3-4 years experience and upwards, really. I think when you start getting to that senior level, the expectation is that you are qualified as a cost lawyer.
Lovely, thank you very much. So we'll go on to our next question, and to some extent, Amy's talked a little bit about this already. So let's discuss courtroom advocacy and how that works within the role of the cost lawyer. So under the Legal Services Act, cost lawyers have the right of audience, and advocacy was in the CLPQ courses taught as a separate award, which is called the Award in Cost Advocacy, and prepares you for that part of your role as a future cost lawyer. Amy, do you want to talk a little bit about some of your experience of advocacy and some of the things that you've worked on?
Yes. So I do quite a lot of costs and case management hearings, dealing with the budgeting side of that. And being able to do advocacy, I think, is very useful because it's almost like cradle to grave with regard to budgeting, preparing the budget, preparing the narrative of incurred costs, preparing the BDR, so the budget discussion report, which is essentially a negotiation document that is exchanged between the parties once the budget is filed and served, trying to negotiate on those costs, and then going to the hearing to make those submissions, I think is really useful when you've already kind of prepared the budget. You've already done all that, all the preparation and the work that's gone into it. So you know the case inside out. And I think that definitely gives you an advantage, I would say, over potentially your opponent who the conducting solicitor, for example, the conducting solicitor may have done that work or instructed internal cost drafts people, but then instructed a barrister to deal with directions and also cost budgets. And of course, because these are barristers that have received external instructions, they're not going to know the case as well as you do, having prepared the budget and then making submissions to back up the budget you have prepared. So I think that is really useful. In terms of other things I work on, we have a lot of cost and case management conferences. We haven't had a lot of detailed assessment hearings recently. I mean, the biased part of me would say that's because we're all such good negotiators, so we negotiate them before it gets to a detailed assessment. We haven't actually had a lot of application hearings this year. If we do deal with applications, a lot of the time they'll be heard at the CCMC, so it's all kind of part and parcel of the same thing. But again, if an application is dealt with at a CCMC, a cost lawyer is there already to deal with the cost budgeting. It's really helpful because applications are ordinarily summarily assessed. So there'll be a statement of cost, an N260, and the judge will have to decide the amount of cost that the losing party to the application will pay the winning party. So of course, if the cost lawyer is already there, they can make submissions on the level of cost that should be allowed. So for example, the rates and any items that are disputed in the document scheduled by the defendant. I think I don't know if I can add any more than that, Madeline, without waffling even more than I already have.
Oh no, not at all, not at all. Is there a particularly interesting case that you've dealt with as a cost lawyer, or particularly interesting hearing?
Well, one that sticks in my mind, which wasn't a particularly successful hearing, but it was a good learning experience, was one in the county court in June 23, where I'd prepared a skeleton to dispense with budgeting and made submissions to the judge at that hearing. It wasn't successful, but at the end of it, he said, Miss Dunkley, I found your skeleton argument very helpful, and I'll be holding on to that for future reference. In terms of the budget, we didn't do particularly well on the budget, and so I actually prepared documents for appeal. We actually applied for permission to appeal, and I prepared the documents for that. So that was a really, really good experience, and also quite cathartic in a way, because you're trying to rectify the result of a hearing that you've been involved in. We did actually get permission to appeal, which we were really happy about. And for people that have done a few budgeting hearings, that's also quite unusual, because the judge has a wide range of discretion when in allowing the budgeted costs. So getting permission to appeal on a budget decision is quite rare. But we actually got permission to appeal, and then the claim settled a few days after. So we never went to the actual appeal hearing. But that was a really, really interesting issue to be involved in. And I think in terms of advocacy is something that is very difficult and is a skill that is built up over years and years and years. And I'm in no means an amazing advocate or the best advocate. But it takes people years to hone advocacy, because it is a craft. But it helps you with skills that can be applied in all areas. For example, I feel much less nervous, and hopefully I come across as a better speaker in this seminar today, because of my experience previously doing advocacy. It really helps with your public speaking skills. And I've done a lot more advocacy since qualifying as a cost lawyer. So yeah.
Fantastic, thank you very much. We will move on to the next question. So, Amna, what advice would you give to anybody on this call who's thinking about doing the course? We've touched a little bit about how to juggle work and full-time study, so I've rephrased the question a little bit. What advice would you give them to anyone who's considering?
Well, I'd say if you're in a similar role that I was before, or if you're a law graduate, even if you're not a law graduate and you're looking for a way to become a legally recognised professional without taking such a traditional route, it's a great way to qualify. And everything I've learned on the course so far has been really, really helpful. I'm going to give this as an example. For example, when you're going to university, you do your some modules, you'll think, why exactly am I learning this? Like, it's not going to benefit me in any way. Not had that experience with this course so far, so it feels like you're making the most out of your time, and that way, I'm not upset about spending my Saturdays studying because I know that is everything that I'm learning is going to benefit me in the future. So, for example, the second part of the first year, I've learned civil litigation so far, and professional standards and ethics. All of that is all relevant. So, yeah, it was a great way to qualify.
Thank you. Right, so the final question before we move on to Q&A, and this is to all three of you. What do you think the future outlook is for cost lawyers in the legal market, and why is it a good time to make a career move? Matt, would you like to start us off?
I think we've probably covered most of the points why you would kind of transition from being a cost draft person to a cost lawyer, or maybe you want a career in costs and going down the solicitor route isn't for you. I think in terms of law firms, the cost market's it's so niche within the legal field that it's always busy. So I think for myself, with your law firms, it's centered around probably Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, Sheffield, Birmingham, and London. That's where the main probably opportunities are. And they'll look at kind of that junior level to mid-level to senior level, really. And I think they're always on the lookout for good quality talent because the pool is so niche. So there's never a period where law firms aren't looking for cost lawyers or people that want to do the cost lawyer qualification. So it's busy month by month, year on year, really. I don't think I've ever had a quiet year. I think in terms of remote working, I think you'll get probably more remote work if you need it at cost consultancies and cost firms. But I think private practice and law firms, you're pretty much looking at a hybrid split, really. For the foreseeable, there's not many law firms that offer kind of fully remote roles.
What's a typical starting salary for a newly qualified cost lawyer? Or does that vary?
Difficult one, really. I think there's so many different firms, so many different sizes. Obviously, you do get cost lawyers in cost consultancies as well. So some cost consultancy will tend to pay more than maybe law firms, but then the whole package as a law firm is more appealing. So I can't really put a figure on it. But I know there are firms out there that once you've done the cost lawyer qualification, you will go to a certain salary. I think Amy, Bilber, and Kent, they do it when once you've qualified as a cost lawyer, you probably hit a threshold where then you are automatically put onto that salary. So I'd say that's probably more for kind of juniors going through that cost training and the cost lawyer qualification, which is kind of that 2-3 year period. I think once you've done both and you've qualified, you then probably jump up to a certain level in salary. But I think to put a figure on it, it's so vague across locations, across firms. It's hard for me to say.
Okay. Amy, what do you think the future outlook is for cost lawyers?
I think the future is healthy. I mean, just in my firm, when I joined the team, we were quite a small team, maybe six people. We've now over doubled the size of our cost team since I've been at BBK. So I joined in May 2019. So in just under 6 years, it's over and above doubled in size. So, and I think that shows that the work is there. As Matt has said, he hasn't experienced a lull in any recruitment. There's still demand for cost lawyers, especially I think that is a reflection of, and what I want to highlight actually is the varied nature of the work. As a solicitor, most solicitors will qualify in one area. So, for example, personal injury or commercial or corporate. As a cost lawyer, cost lawyers are needed in all areas of litigation. So criminal, legal aid, court of protection, clinical negligence, personal injury, commercial. And as Matt has said, that is why it is so difficult to put a distinctive cap on the salary, because, of course, if you go and become a cost lawyer at a Magic Circle law firm, that's not going to be the same as a salary as a cost lawyer working in legal aid, for example. But the fact that it's so varied, I think, shows that it is a secure career to be in. I mean, without sounding crude, money makes the world go round. Law firms have to make some form of profit, and that's where cost lawyers come in. And without cost lawyers, there would be significant reductions to access to justice, in terms of, for example, potential claimants being able to access funding, and also things like, for example, litigants in person. I know a few cost lawyers that will take litigant in person instructions. So, for example, from clients that may want to sue their own solicitors, if they haven't instructed a particularly reputable firm of solicitors, and their solicitors, they feel, are trying to get them to pay more money than what they should. So it really does permeate into all aspects of the law and litigation. So that's why I think it's going to be a career for years to come. And now there's no better time than now to make this move, especially, as I've said, with the fact that the courts and society are moving more towards this consumer protection, and as part and parcel of that and recent court decisions, I think it is unlikely that that cost drafts people will be able to practice without any restrictions, as they have done thus far, because there is this push towards regulation and protecting consumers. And when we say that, for example, if a consumer instructed a cost drafts person and the cost drafts person was negligent, that consumer would have no way of recouping that money from them, because as a cost drafts person, they are not required to have professional indemnity insurance. If you're a cost lawyer, you have to have professional indemnity insurance as part of being a regulated individual. So again, much more protection for consumers if they instruct a cost lawyer rather than a cost drafts person. I mean, even in popular culture, you've got the Wagatha Christie case that came out, which all us cost lawyers were very happy about, because all the newspapers were like, what is budgeting? What are costs?
Great being the Wagatha Christie case, shining light onto the profession.
Yeah, you also had Hugh Grant tweeting about his Part 36 offer woes, wanting to push it to trial, but would have to end up at risk of paying costs if they didn't accept the offer. So those are just a few examples in popular culture, but it is a career that has been around for a while, and it definitely is a career to stay, I think. And as Matt's already said, there's so many progression opportunities. A lot of people I know are now quite high up in their respective firms, or partners who qualified as cost lawyers. So I think there definitely is progression, and it is definitely a rewarding career, and I personally really enjoy it. I love the nature of the work, the fact that it's so varied. No one day is the same. So if you like the sound of what we've said, I guess, then definitely just give it a go.
Lovely.
You won't be disappointed.
I think it's a perfect note to end the panel discussion on. I'm just conscious of time, and I know there's been quite a few questions in the chat, so we'll move over to those. But thank you so much to the three of you for the answers that you've given so far today. Right, let's have a look at the questions. Oh my goodness, lots and lots. Right. Okay. Okay, so we talked a little bit earlier on about managing full-time study and the course. You can find more information about the structure of the course on the ACLT website. So after the webinar, there will be some follow-up and there'll be links in there as to how you can find more information about the structure of the course and what's covered. It's a 2-year course. Depending on your previous study background, that determines whether or not you're exempt from all or part of the first year. So someone's posted a question as to the length of the course and whether or not you have a law degree or not. Okay, would there be any exemptions from somebody outside with an NLB from outside the UK coupled with an LLM within the UK and 10 years of course? At the moment, we don't have any exemptions against the course for prior work experience. Depending on what you've studied, we can have a look at it. So my suggestion would be that you email the support inbox after this webinar and with your specific circumstances, and we can have a look at it. Okay, can you do the course if you do not work within a course role where you are a supervisor, i.e. if you're a freelance draftsperson? What is the course fees? So there are people studying the course who work for themselves in costs. So that's definitely a possibility. And the course fees are on the ACLT website. The fees are determined by how much of the course you need to do, depending on your exemptions and things like that. So it's difficult to give an exact figure. But if you have a look on the ACLT website, you can have a look at the fees document, which lists out all of the fees. Is there any standalone training you can do on how to bill legal aid cases where the costs go over 25k? That is a very specific question. I'm not aware of any specific legal aid courses on billing. It is possible to do the modules of the CLPQ individually. So I would suggest having a look at the syllabus for our legal aid module. So legal aid is currently a module on year 2 of the course, and see if that would suit your purposes, and we can look at that after the call. But other than that, I'm not aware of any specific external training on that particular point. Okay, what sort of roles should somebody in this area look for? i.e. paralegal, junior cost officers, and can you recommend jobs boards, recruiters that advertise these roles? So I mean, from my own experience of the students that we have on the course, there is a wide variety of job titles and roles within our current student body. So some students are trainee cost lawyers, some are cost draftspeople, some are cost paralegals, and there's other job titles within that. Matt, in terms of looking for jobs and things like that, what is sort of the range of job titles that are applicable that you see?
I think looking at that question, I think obviously I would imagine it's someone at the junior end. So you would be looking at kind of a cost paralegal, a junior cost draftsman, sort of role really. But there's only, as I say, a select number of firms that offer the cost work, because you will get firms that may outsource their work to cost firms or cost law firms. So it is more kind of that cost paralegal, junior cost draftsman, trainee cost draftsman, in terms of the roles that you're looking for. But like I say, I can assist you with that in terms of the firms that potentially will look at the trainee level and the junior level, because a lot of firms will tend to look at kind of that mid-level upwards as well. So, but not every solicitor firm or law firm has a cost department. So, like I say, it is quite niche in terms of where you need to look, etc.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much, Olivia, for answering the question posed by Erin about legal aid. That's really helpful. Thank you. And I will have a look at that as well, for my own knowledge. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, well, if there's no more questions, that brings the webinar to a close. I want to say a very big thank you to Matt, Amy and Amna for answering all of the questions today, and your contributions and your knowledge, insight and experience, which is hugely helpful. So thank you so much for giving up your time and helping ACLT training with the webinar today. It's much appreciated. In terms of further information, we will be making a recording of the webinar available after the session, and you can find more information on the ACLT website. The web link is on the slides below. If you've got any specific questions, you are also really welcome to email our support inbox. I think there's a typo on that slide, unfortunately, which is not picked up, but we will ensure that it's corrected when we send out the information later on today. In terms of the next intake for the course, I've just seen that there's a question in the chat. So the course has 2 intakes a year, one in February. So the next one is in February 2025. Applications are open at the moment, and we always have an intake in September as well. So the next one after that would be September 2025. We will be releasing information shortly as well about potential scholarship that has very kindly been made available by the Association of Cost Lawyers, which we will be sending information out to people that have registered for this webinar as well. Applications close in January. For the course, it's usually the middle of January that applications tend to close for the February intake. But if you have a problem meeting that deadline, if you email the team, and then there's always flexibility within that. We can always help you if you need some extra flex with the deadline. Okay, so without further ado, one last thank you to you all, and thank you to everyone who's joined today. I hope you found it useful and informative, and that you'll consider qualifying as cost lawyers and studying the course. So yeah, thank you very much. End of the webinar. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Madeline.
Yeah, thanks, Madeline.
Okay, bye-bye, everyone.
Cheers.